Now let's talk about what makes an airplane turn and how you and I can turn an airplane. First of all, you and I both know the way you turn an airplane is you bank the airplane. Now, what banking the airplane does is it tilts the lift, because lift is up through the ceiling of an aircraft. When an airplane is in straight and level flight, all the lift is right straight up through the ceiling of the aircraft, and all the lift is vertical. But when you tilt this airplane, or bank the airplane, I should say, you tilt the lift. And then you now have a horizontal component of lift, and the horizontal component of lift is what makes the airplane turn. So they're going to ask you on the test, what is it that makes an airplane turn? And the answer is the horizontal component of lift is what makes the airplane turn, right there, the horizontal component of lift. Now, before we get done with this drawing, let's you and I cover in great detail how you turn an airplane. First of all, you have an airplane flying in straight and level flight. All the lift is through the ceiling of the aircraft. All the lift is right straight up. Now, what you do to bank the airplane for the turn is you put the aileron down. You put the left aileron down, and that'll increase the angle of attack on this left wing. The wing will go up. But because you increase angle of attack, you increase lift, you also increase drag, the wing will start to go back in the wrong direction. And look what happens when you put the right aileron up. You put the right aileron up, you decrease lift, and because you decrease lift, you decrease drag, and that wing wants to go forward. In other words, what happens when you put the ailerons down for a turn, or use aileron control to make the airplane turn, the airplane actually wants to yaw the wrong direction. And it's a design feature of airplanes. They haven't been able to design it completely out of airplanes, and that's why you use rudder in a turn, just to correct for that adverse yaw. Because it's the banking of the airplane and the tilting of the lift and the horizontal component of lift that makes the airplane turn. And what do you use rudder for? You use rudder to correct for the yaw, to control the yaw when you're turning an airplane. Now, notice when you bank this airplane, you now have not only to support the weight of the aircraft when you're banking it for a turn, but you also have to support centrifugal force. The wings have to support that also. And so you increase the amount of load the wings have to carry. Well, to compensate for that, you actually have to use a little back pressure on the wheel and increase the angle of attack a little bit, or otherwise, when you bank the airplane will descend. So you do use back pressure when you pull back on the wheel in the turn to keep the airplane from descending, because you increase the load on the aircraft. Now, that load that you have on the wings of the aircraft is measured in terms of G's. G's is the force you're putting on the airplane. If you're in a screaming dive on the airplane, you pull back on the wheel, you might feel a few G's. So G's is load factor on the aircraft. Load factor is measured in G's, and that stands for times the force of gravity. Turns are a basic flight maneuver that increase the load factor on the aircraft compared to straight and level flight. Because when you're turning this airplane, you're compensated for centrifugal force, and you're going to feel some load factor on an aircraft. So let's assume you do an approach to a stall in an airplane, and you're in a bank. Will, if being in a bank, cause you to stall at a higher or lower speed? Well, the answer is, during an approach to a stall, an increase in load factor will cause the airplane to stall at a higher airspeed. It's as if the airplane were heavier, because the wings have to support more weight. Now, the increased load factor in an airplane, either from pulling out of a dive or in a real steep turn, can place stress on the airframe greater than it's designed to handle. If you do this at a very high speed, you can actually put too much stress on the wings of the aircraft. Now, what causes that stress, of course, is the G's you're putting on the airplane. If you slow the airplane down, the wings will stall first. So how do you protect the airplane? By slowing it down. Now, the FAA is going to ask you just how much load are you going to put on the wings of an aircraft during a turn. So let's you and I take a look at a load factor chart. They're going to ask you about this on the test. And to do that, let's you and I take a look at figure 2 back here in the back of the book. And they're going to say, let's assume that you put the airplane in a 30-degree bank angle. Now, a 30-degree bank angle, let's assume the airplane weighs 3,300 pounds to begin with. Well, when you put this airplane in a 30-degree bank angle, there's a little bit of increase in load factor. By the way, the way you read this is you go to the bank angle down here at the bottom of the chart, which is 30 degrees, go up to this load factor line, stop and make a dot, and read across to the left and read your load factor. Load factor, in this case, would be about, I'd say about 1.2 G's. Well, let's take a look at the numbers. If the airplane weighed 3,300 pounds in the first place, and you multiply that times 1.2 G's, now you're going to find out the airplane weighs 3,960 pounds. You just punch that out with your calculator. Let's do another one. Let's take a look at another airplane. Let's put this airplane into a bank and see what happens. This time you have the airplane into a 60-degree bank in this particular case. And a 60-degree bank will start down at the bottom of the chart at 60 degrees, read up till we hit the load factor line, read off to the left. We see that we're going to put a load factor of 2 on the airplane. That's 2 G's. It means the airplane and everything in the airplane will weigh twice as much. Now, if this airplane weighed 2,300 pounds to begin with, and we put this airplane under a load factor of 2, let's see what's going to happen to the airplane. Okay, you have 2,300 pounds, you have a load factor of 2, and now you find out the airplane weighs 2 times 2,300 pounds, or 4,600 pounds. You guys are getting on to it. Let's do one more. They're going to ask you about this on the test. This time, they're going to have an airplane in a 45-degree bank. So let's take a look at this airplane in a 45-degree bank. We're taking a look at figure 2, by the way. So you start down here at 45 degrees, read up to the curved load factor line, stop and make a dot, and read off the left. About a 45-degree bank. If I look at that very, very carefully, I'm going to say we've got about 1.4 G's on the airplane. So now let's take a look at an airplane we'll say that weighs 4,500 pounds, and we put 1.4 G's on this airplane. Well, if it weighed 4,500 pounds to begin with, you'll multiply that times 1.4, and now the wings have to support 6,300 pounds of weight because you have the G's on the airplane. So the question I want to ask you again, can you put too much load on the wings simply by rolling the airplane in too steep a bank? And the answer is yes, you can. Well, what determines the amount of excess load that can be imposed on the wings? And the answer is the speed of the airplane. If you slow the airplane down and put a lot of load on the wings, the airplane will stall. But if you have the airplane at very high speed and put a lot of excess load on the wings will become damaged. So the amount of excess load that can be imposed on the wings of an aircraft depends on the speed of the airplane.